Hey everyone, Nathan here from TrueFire. TrueFire proudly partners with Grammy Award winners, top session players, and world-class educators to produce the planet's most comprehensive portfolio of immersive music-making apps, interactive documentaries, and contextual learning experiences. At TrueFire, you can practice smart and play hard with the best in the biz. Each week, we'll be featuring one of our top educators and providing you with a glimpse into their educational libraries available on TrueFire. Tune in each week and don't forget to subscribe. Now today, we'd like to feature Josh Smith. At the age of 3, Josh received his first guitar, and at the age of 6, he started taking guitar lessons. By the time he was 12, Josh was playing at established professional blues jams in South Florida, such as Musicians Exchange Cafe in Fort Lauderdale and Club M in Hollywood, Florida. Today, we'd like to feature 3 lessons from Josh's courses Blue Highways Improv Roadmaps, and Blues, Country, and R&B Guitar Heroes.
All right, let's talk about getting outside of the pentatonic scale. Now, this is all part and parcel to finding your voice and building your vocabulary. So here I was, a young man playing guitar already for, 7, 8 years. I started playing when I was 6. So by 13, 14, as silly as it sounds, I was pretty good. And I was well-versed in blues and able to play, and improvise pretty much any time just playing blues. And I felt pretty good about myself. And then I started hearing other guys. I started hearing John Scofield and Robin Ford and Larry Carlton and Wes Montgomery. And, of course, like I said, I was listening to a lot of horn players. That's Charlie Parker and, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Dizzy, guys like that. And I started kind of hearing some of that stuff in my head, but having no idea how to play it. And I realized there were some things I could do to kind of start working on these things. And so this is the generalization of how I break out of the box. I'm thinking of basically 4 things. And I split that into 2 groups. 1 thing and then 3 other things. And this is going to sound complicated, but it's not. The 1 thing, the main thing, is building up the vocabulary of knowing what to play over every chord that's happening. So when a song is happening, you learn all these things over your life of what works over a certain chord. Now, this goes back to the basics. This is learning your circle of fifths, knowing that when a chord comes up in a song, you can play A, B, C, D, E. All these things work over that chord. It may be as simple as, when this A7 comes, I know I can play A pentatonic. Whatever. And then you learn all these other things you can also play. But that's column A, learning everything that works over that chord. Column B is connecting that chord to another chord. Now, this is the crux and the basis for jazz. What do guys do to connect one chord to the other? Now, you always hear guys talk about playing the changes. Well, there's 2 ways to play the changes. There's playing over the changes, and to me, there's the more important one, which is playing through the changes. Now, the difference is playing over the changes means when a chord change happens, you then play something that works over that chord. So I eliminate that phrase, playing the changes, over the changes, because that all works into column A. That's learning what to play over each chord. Playing through the changes is how do you connect one chord to another. Now that's the 3 things that I'm going to talk about right now. I connect these chords together in 3 ways: chromatics, turnarounds, and diminished or augmented chords. Now, these 3 things literally only exist to create bridges between chords, to create tension. So let's start talking about that. Chromatics. What do I mean by chromatics? Well, I just mean stuff as simple as, moving from one chord to the next via chromatically. So let's say I'm going from A to D. I may play, or I may play, all these different chromatic moves you can get. Right? So you can use those things, of course, to connect chords together. So I may be playing a blues in A, and as simply as chromatically connecting those chords like that, I'm creating something that connects chords together. I'm playing through the changes. So I would start to take those ideas and put them into my solos. So I'd play. Right? So that's me playing basically in my solo. I'm chromatically moving in and out of the chords. That's one way that guys connect chords together. The second way is by using diminished chords and augmented chords and substitutions. So diminished chords literally exist to create tension. Right? When you hear that chord, what's the next chord you want to hear? So literally, you can do that in your solo. So let's say you're on that 4 chord. You want to create that in your solo. That's me playing the diminished scale, going from D to E flat diminished to lead me back to the 1, to A. So you can do that all over the place to connect chords together. And then the big one is the 2-5-1 turnaround. You can take this 2-5-1 turnaround and use this all over music. In fact, in jazz, a lot of songs are written solely by 2-5-1s changing keys, things like giant steps and things like that, which is very advanced. But for sake of the argument, let's say we're going from that same A to D, from the 1 to the 4. You can play a 2-5-1 to lead you to the 4 chord. And it's called a turnaround for a reason. But instead of playing the 2 and 5 of A, because we're trying to get to D, we're going to play the 2 and 5 of D. So if we're in A, I could play E minor to A to get to D. So you can hear, if I just play that in rhythm, Freddie Green style, why it's called a turnaround. Because it literally turns the phrase around and leads me to that chord. So what if I did it in my solo? So that's me playing in my solo. You can do this everywhere. So I could take a blues and put a 2-5-1 everywhere. So I use the 2-5-1 to turn around between all 3 chords of the blues, back and forth, to create kind of that feeling of going through the changes. Now, when you're on the chords, you learned all that stuff to play. But those other tools are what you use to put them together. And that's what helps you kind of get outside of the box. And there's also all these other things you can do, all those other scales, all those other modes. There's no way around doing the homework on that. Learning, that melodic minor, you can play that over the 5th degree of the scale and things like that. That takes a lot of work, and that's something we can dive into in depth later on. But these are the tools that I use to really kind of bust through the playing and make things flow, because that's what you're trying to do even when you're outside the box. When you're playing through the changes, you're trying to make things flow together and not make it sound like you're changing keys when a new chord comes around. And that's how you do that, by connecting the dots. And to me, those are the tools to make those things happen. All right, let's put a little bit of this into practice, as much as we can. I'm going to pay attention to what the band is doing on the backing track and try to let that guide my ebb and flow of the solo. And then I'm also going to kind of go from a real aggressive stance to a real laid-back stance, all while reading the dynamics of the band. So you can hear how letting your emotions and just having open ears can kind of inform your improvisation. Don't worry so much about the actual notes, but more about the intent of what I'm doing. 1, 2. right, let's try and talk about what was going on there. Now, number one, I started the solo really, really aggressive. So I was playing on top of the beat, but mostly I was playing with an attitude of... Now, there's no way of mistaking that. You know how I'm feeling when I play something like that. So then the second chorus, I eased off a little bit and started playing kind of real laid back. I didn't necessarily change my dynamics, but I changed the attitude and aggression with which I played. I started playing just kind of straight and flat. Like I wasn't too excited. I was laid back and in the moment. Then I started really, really listening for what the band was doing. And I started to hear, okay, here comes the drummer. He starts playing. And I used that as a cue to build my solo from that build into a single note run. And that's an example of really having open ears and hearing what's going on with the band. You know, if there was a keyboard player, he might have played something, and I might have played something specifically to answer what he did. In that case, it was the drums, and I was listening to what was going on, and they kind of cued me on when to take the solo up a notch. So it's all a matter of kind of reading what's going on in the bandstand, reading what's going on in the room, and balancing that against how you're feeling and what you're hearing. And, that'll help you really, really tell your personal story and play your solo, and be a better improviser. All right, let's talk about Stevie Ray Vaughan. Oof. Talk about life-changing. For me, nobody really changed my life as much as this guy did. I started playing guitar at 6 years old. And I was into B.B. King and Albert King because my dad liked the blues and he had a lot of records. But Stevie, when I finally paid attention and sat down and really heard Stevie Ray Vaughan, it was when someone handed me a bootleg of Live at the El Mocambo before it was an official release. Now, I'm 10 when Stevie Ray passes away, so I was probably 12 when I got this VHS. And I put it in, and again, it was like my brain exploded. Like I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was somebody influenced by all the things I was listening to already, and he had taken it to this level that I didn't think was reachable. And besides that, he was putting everything he had into every note he played. He was sweating his butt off and playing so hard, and man, it was just so inspiring to see this. I was literally blown away, and I knew that's what I wanted to do with my life. So I went to the record store, and the only record they had in stock was Couldn't Stand the Weather. And that's his second album. You put it in, and of course the first thing on the record is, Scuttle Button. And God, if that's the first thing that comes on when you're a kid and you hear that, it's just like, what the heck is this? And I didn't know, that's inspired by Lonnie Mack and all that. I just thought this guy's the fastest guitar player in the world and the greatest guitar player that's ever lived. And, again, changed my life overnight. Now, as I dug deeper into Stevie Ray and got all the records, I started to hear how much he loved Albert King, how much he loved Otis Rush, how much he loved B.B. King, Jimi Hendrix, what he was listening to. But again, the biggest thing that I always took away from Stevie was that joy and the effort, the amount of effort he put into everything. So I fell hard, man. I grew my hair. I bought a cowboy hat. I bought cowboy boots, and I was all about Stevie Ray. I got my first Strat. This isn't it. But it was all inspired by wanting to be like Stevie Ray Vaughan. And man, it's directly responsible for some ways in where I am now as a musician. Because not only did I go too far down the Stevie Ray Vaughan path, I also had that light bulb moment of, I can't just be a Stevie Ray Vaughan clone. And I think if I hadn't gone as far as I would have, deep into that Stevie thing, maybe I wouldn't have ever had that epiphany. And I'd still be kind of just doing his thing on the periphery most of the time. So it was very important in my development. So if you've never heard Stevie Ray Vaughan, number one, I'm sorry. And number 2, go buy them all. There's no reason not to have Texas Flood, Couldn't Stand the Weather, Soul to Soul, Live Alive, In Step, and Sky is Crying, the posthumous release. You need to have all these things. And you definitely need to get Live at the Alma combo on video. And wow, it's going to blow your mind, like it did mine. Now, what made Stevie so special playing-wise, besides all that, magic that we talked about? Well, number 1, he was incredibly fluid, right? So he could take that Albert King, and he had that lick ender. He turned it in. He would end a lot of time on that flat 3. And it was like his lick ender. And again, I took that part and parcel, and you'll hear me play it all the time. Magical stuff. But he was so fluid, like a never-ending stream. Special stuff, right? Really, really great. And of course, he had the Albert King thing going on. Now, he played it with a little more gain. He kind of made it his own, but I mean, a lot of people, when he first came out, thought that was Albert King. When they heard him playing on Let's Dance with David Bowie, they thought David Bowie got Albert King to play on this tune. So, he had Albert, he had Otis Rush going on in there. A lot of his fast stuff came from Lonnie Mack. So, like, if you listen to Rude Mood, or that was Lightning Hopkins, but Scuttle Button, that's all directly out of the Lonnie Mack Chicken Bacon playbook. A lot of his bends came from Albert, but also from Otis Rush. There's that little phrase ender. But man, listen to that fluidity. He was so quick and fluid. And yeah, that when I heard stuff like that, I had no other feeling but I want to do that. I need to do that. Another thing that Stevie did that blew me away as a kid was he played with a Leslie all the time. He had a Fender Vibratone, and I remember hearing him play Cold Shot, and I don't have a Leslie, but I got a pedal, and having that... and having that little thing that he would play... playing licks like... I was like, wow, I need a Leslie. So I saved up and I bought a Fender Vibratone because I had to. I had to do that thing. I had to be able to say I had the gear, I had the stuff. I was that obsessed. Like I said, he just totally changed my life in all the ways for the positive. So let's get into a Stevie Ray Vaughan style track. For me, that means it's got to be a shuffle in E, right? Like Pride and Joy. You need that Texas shuffle where all of the Stevie-isms can come out, and I can kind of tip my hat for real to probably, the most important influence I ever had in terms of my development. So let's get into some Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Thanks for watching our Educator Spotlight. Now, just a reminder that you can join TrueFire for free and get a 14-day free trial of All Access. No credit card required and no strings attached. Come ignite your guitar playing with TrueFire. Practice smart, play hard.